Honestly, I don't even know where to start. My hands are still shaking a little just thinking about it. Typing this out. It sounds so cliche, you know? Like something from a bad late-night movie. But when it happens to you, when the safety of your own home, your own bed, just evaporates. It's not a movie. It's this cold, hard knot in your stomach that never really goes away. I just moved into the place. It was this older house, maybe built in the 70s. It had been a rental for years before I got it. It was too big for just me, really. 3 bedrooms, 2 floors, a basement I hadn't even really looked at yet. But the price was right, and it was close to my new job. It felt like a fresh start. I needed that. The first few days were just normal chaos. You know how moving is. Cardboard boxes stacked everywhere. The smell of packing tape and dust filling your nose until you can't smell anything else. I was running on caffeine and takeout pizza. I was exhausted. That bone-deep kind of tired where your muscles just feel like stretched rubber bands. It was, I think, the 3rd night? Yeah, Tuesday. I remember because I'd meant to call my sister and completely forgot because I was just so wiped out. I'd spent the whole day unpacking the kitchen and the living room, trying to make the place feel less like a storage unit and more like a home. By 9 o'clock, I couldn't move another box. I just couldn't. I ordered Chinese food, cracked open a beer, and sat on my couch, which was practically the only piece of furniture, set up in the living room, and just stared at the blank wall where the TV was supposed to go. It was quiet. That was the first thing I really noticed about the house when I stopped moving. The silence was heavy. It was out in the suburbs, on a street with big lots, so the neighbors weren't right on top of you. There were a lot of trees in the backyard, big old oaks that sort of loomed over the roof. I remember sitting there, eating cold lo mein straight from the carton, listening to the house. It made noises. All houses do, right? Especially older ones. The wood expands and contracts. The pipes rattle a little when the heat kicks on. It's normal. I kept telling myself that creak. It came from the kitchen. Just a sharp little pop of wood. I froze, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. I held my breath, just listening. Nothing. Just the low hum of the refrigerator. It's just the house settling, I said out loud. My voice sounded thin, swallowed up by the empty space in the living room. Talking to myself. Great start to living alone. I finished eating, tossed the cartons in the trash, and decided to call it a night. I went around locking up. Front door deadbolt. Click. Back door deadbolt. Click. I checked the windows in the living room. Everything was tight. I'm careful like that. Always have been. Living alone as a woman, you develop these habits. You double-dash checked that my bedroom was upstairs, the master at the end of the hall. It was huge, way too much space for just my queen-size bed and a dresser. It had these 2 big windows looking out over the backyard. I hadn't put curtains up yet. Just those cheap plastic blinds that were already there. I remember brushing my teeth in the attached bathroom, looking at my reflection. I looked wrecked. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy knot. I spat out the toothpaste, rinsed, and walked into the bedroom. Before I got into bed, I walked over to the window to close the blinds. It was pitch black outside. The yard was just a void. I couldn't see the trees, just the sense of them being there. As I reached for the little plastic wand to twist the blinds shut, I hesitated. It was just a feeling. You know when you feel like someone is looking at you? The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Prickles ran down my arms. I peered out into the dark, straining my eyes. Nothing. Just blackness. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered. I twisted the blinds shut quickly, cutting off the view. I grabbed an old tie shirt to sleep in, turned off the overhead light, and crawled into bed. The sheets were cool, and the mattress felt amazingly soft after days of lifting boxes. I was asleep within minutes. Deep, exhausted sleep. Then I wasn't. I woke up snap. Just awake. Eyes wide open, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling in the dark. My heart was hammering against my ribs hard. Thump dash thump dash thump dot. Why was I awake? I lay there, perfectly still, barely breathing, listening. The house was silent. No furnace rumble. No refrigerator hum from downstairs. Just dead, heavy silence. I checked my phone on the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. The little glowing numbers seemed incredibly bright in the pitch black. I must have had a bad dream. That had to be it. The stress of the move, the new strange place, it was messing with my head. I rolled over, trying to get comfortable again, pulling the duvet up under my chin. Close your eyes. Go back to sleep. You have work tomorrow. Scrape. My eyes flew open again. It was faint. So faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But it was there. It sounded like something stiff brushing against the siding of the house underneath my window. A branch? It was probably a branch blowing in the wind. I listened for wind. I couldn't hear any. Usually, you can hear the leaves rustling or the wind whistling around the eaves if it's blowing hard, enough to move a branch against the house. It was dead calm outside. Okay, maybe an animal. A raccoon climbing up the side of the house? They do that, right? I lay there, tense, every muscle locked up. I was waiting for it again. 5 minutes passed. 10. My heartbeat started to slow down a little. It was an animal. Had to be. I finally started to drift off again. That weird half-sleep where your thoughts get slippery. Then, I heard it. It wasn't outside this time. It was downstairs. A floorboard creaked. Not a little settling pop like earlier in the kitchen. This was the sustained groaning creak of weight being put on old wood. Someone stepping down hard. Creak. Then silence. My blood ran cold. I mean, literally cold. I felt the temperature drop in my veins. I sat bolt upright in bed, clutching the blankets to my chest. Did I lock the front door? Yes, I remembered the click. Did I lock the back door? Yes, I checked it twice. I always check it twice. Maybe I didn't close it all the way? Maybe the latch didn't catch? No, I pushed on it. It was solid. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. Any explanation other than the one screaming in my head. Maybe something fell over? A stack of boxes? Yeah, that could be it. A stack of heavy books unbalanced and tipped over. That would make a loud noise and maybe cause the floor to creak. I strained my ears, waiting for the follow-up noise. The thud of books hitting the floor. Silence. If something fell, it fell silently. Which made no sense. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit there in the dark waiting. But I was paralyzed. The thought of getting out of that bed, putting my feet on the floor, walking out into that dark hallway. I couldn't do it. I felt horribly, incredibly vulnerable. I grabbed my phone again. 3:35 a.m. I should call the police, but what would I say? I heard a creak? They'd think I was a hysterical woman alone in a new house. They'd take forever to get here, and if they found nothing, I'd feel like an idiot. And what if? What if I called, and he heard me? Asterisk. But why did my mind immediately go to he? I decided to wait. If I heard one more thing, one more undeniable sound that wasn't the house settling or a raccoon, I'd call 911. I clutched the phone in my hand so tight my knuckles turned white. I sat there in the dark, shivering for what felt like hours. It was probably only 20 minutes. Every tiny sound the house made, the normal ones I'd ignored before, now sounded like a threat. The furnace clicking on sounded like a gun cocking. The wind finally picking up outside sounded like footsteps on the roof, but there were no more footsteps inside. No more creaks downstairs. Eventually, the adrenaline started to wear off, leaving me feeling sick and shaky. I must have imagined it. I had to have imagined it. The stress, the exhaustion. It was making me paranoid. I was hearing things. I forced myself to lie back down. "You're safe," I whispered to myself, over and over. "The doors are locked. You're safe. It's just the house." I didn't really sleep the rest of the night. I just sort of dozed in fitful little snatches, jerking awake every few minutes. When the sun finally started to gray the edges of the blinds, I felt a wash of relief so profound I almost cried. Daylight. Daylight meant safety. Things that go bump in the night go away when the sun comes up. I got out of bed, feeling stiff and achy. I grabbed my robe and wrapped it tight around me. I grasped my phone like a weapon and slowly opened my bedroom door. The hallway was empty, quiet. Sunlight was streaming in from the window at the top of the stairs, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It all looked so normal. I crept downstairs, keeping close to the wall, wincing every time a step creaked under my foot. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Everything was exactly where I had left it. The stack of boxes by the door was still standing. Nothing had fallen over. I walked to the back door, locked. The deadbolt was turned horizontal, exactly as I'd left it. I went to the front door, locked. See? I told myself, "You were freaking out over nothing. You're losing it." I felt foolish. A grown woman, terrified of a floor creaking in an old house. I shook my head, trying to laugh it off, but the laugh sounded brittle. I made coffee, strong coffee. I needed it to jumpstart my brain and shake off the lingering dread from the night. As the coffee maker gurgled, I looked out the kitchen window into the backyard. It was a nice morning. Birds were chirping. The big oak trees looked majestic, not ominous like they had the night before. I decided to go outside for a second, just to get some fresh air and prove to myself that everything was fine. I unlocked the back door and stepped out onto the small wooden deck. The air was crisp and cool. I took a deep breath, letting the tension drain out of my shoulders. Then I looked down. The deck was slightly damp from the morning dew. And there, right in front of the door, was something that made my breath hitch in my throat. A footprint. Not a muddy, obvious footprint. Just a faint outline in the dew on the wood planks. A large, boot-shaped outline. Pointing toward the door. My heart started doing that hard, fast hammering again. I crouched down, looking closer. It wasn't just one. There were a few leading from the edge of the deck to the door. Okay. Don't panic. Maybe the landlord came by early. No, he would have called. Maybe a meter reader? Do they come into backyards this early? I stood up, my hands starting to shake again. I looked at the door itself. The handle. It looked normal. I leaned in close, inspecting the wood around the lock. It was old wood, painted white a dozen times over the years. There were scratches and dents everywhere. It was hard to tell if anything was new, but then I saw it on the brass doorknob. A smudge. A greasy, dirty smear that looked like a thumbprint right over the keyhole. I hadn't used a key. I'd locked it from the inside with the deadbolt. I backed away from the door, stumble-stepping until I hit the railing of the deck. Someone had been here. Someone had been right at my door last night. But they hadn't gotten in. The doors were locked this morning. I checked them. Wait. A cold chill started at the base of my spine and crawled. It's way up to my skull. Had I checked the basement door? There was an exterior bulkhead door that led down into the basement from the backyard. I knew it was there, but I hadn't opened it since I moved in. The landlord said it was secured from the inside. I walked around the side of the house, my legs feeling like lead. The metal doors were closed. They looked rusty and heavy. I pulled on the handle. Locked. Okay, good. I went back inside, locking the kitchen door behind me immediately. I checked it 3 times. Click, click. I spent the rest of the day on edge. I couldn't focus on unpacking. Every time I picked up a book or a dish, my hands would start shaking. I kept finding myself staring out the windows, scanning the yard, the tree line, looking for, I didn't know what, a shape, a movement. I considered staying at a hotel that night, but that felt like giving up, like letting fear win. This was my house now. I couldn't let some prowler scare me out of it. Besides, the locks held. Whoever it was, they didn't get in dot by the time evening rolled around. I was a wreck. I hadn't eaten all day. The thought of food made me nauseous. The sun started to go down, casting long, stretching shadows across the living room floor. The house began its nightly transformation from a bright, welcoming space into a cavern of dark corners and echoing silence. I decided I needed to be proactive. I went around the entire house, checking every single window. I made sure the little latches were fully engaged. I checked the front and back doors again, 5 times each. Then, I went to the basement door inside the kitchen. It was a plain wooden door. I opened it and looked down into the dark staircase. The smell of damp concrete and mildew drifted up. I flipped the light switch. A single bare bulb flickered on at the bottom of the stairs. I walked down slowly. It was a typical unfinished basement. Concrete floor, stone foundation walls, furnace in the corner, water heater. There were some old shelves left by previous tenants, covered in dust and cobwebs. I went over to the bulkhead stairs that led up to the outside doors. There was a heavy wooden inner door at the bottom of those concrete steps. It was secured with a thick, rusty slide bolt that I grabbed the bolt and tried to wiggle it. It was solid, frozen with rust and age. There was no way anyone opened that from the outside without breaking the door down. I felt a little better. The perimeter was secure. I went back upstairs, closed the basement door, and leaned a heavy kitchen chair under the doorknob, just in case. That night, I took a sleeping pill, an over-the-counter one I'd found in my bathroom kit. I needed to sleep. I couldn't do another night of staring at the ceiling. I went up to bed around 10. I closed the blinds. I double-checked my closet empty. I looked under the bed, nothing but dust bunnies. I locked my bedroom door. It was just a flimsy interior privacy lock. You could pop up with a paperclip from the outside, but it made me feel slightly better. I got into bed, the sleeping pill already making my limbs feel heavy and distant. I fell asleep quickly this time. A deep, chemically induced blackness. I don't know what woke me up. It wasn't a sound this time. It was a feeling. A deep, primal sense of wrongness that punched through the fog of the sleeping pill. I opened my eyes. The room was dark, but my eyes had adjusted. The bedroom door was open. Asterisk, I just stared at it. The rectangle of slightly lighter darkness where the door should have been closed. I had locked it. I remembered turning the little button on the knob that my heart stopped. It didn't hammer. It just stopped. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen, trapped in my own body. My eyes darted around the room, frantically searching the shadows. The dresser, the corner by the closet, the chair in the corner where I'd thrown some clothes. And then I saw him. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't crouching in a corner. He was sitting in the chair, right there in the corner of my bedroom, maybe 5 feet from the foot of my bed. I couldn't make out features, just a shape. A large, dark shape of a man, utterly still. He was just sitting there, watching me. A scream rose in my throat, but it strangled itself into a pathetic little squeak. My whole body began to vibrate with terror. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I was still asleep. This was a nightmare brought on by the pills. "Wake up!" I screamed inside my head. "Wake up, wake up, wake up!" The shape moved, just a shift in weight. The chair creaked. That same dry wood sound I'd heard downstairs the night before. It was real. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. I could feel his gaze, heavy and physical, like a hand pressing down on my chest. He didn't say anything. He didn't attack. He just sat there. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. It was a thick, suffocating thing. Why wasn't he doing anything? What did he want? My mind was fracturing. The sheer terror of it was too much to process. I was trapped in my bed, in my own house, with a stranger sitting feet away from me in the dark. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Minutes? An hour? It felt like an eternity. Me, paralyzed under the duvet. Him, a silent statue in the chair. Then, slowly, deliberately, he stood up. He was tall. He loomed in the darkness. I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't watch. I waited for the footsteps coming toward the bed. I waited for the hand to grab the blankets. I waited for the pain. But the footsteps went away from me. Creak, creak. Across the bedroom floor toward the door. I heard him step out into the hallway. Then, the sound of him walking down the stairs. Not trying to be quiet this time. Just walking. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, praying, begging whatever listened that he would just leave. I heard the front door unlock. The heavy clack of the deadbolt turning. Then the door opened and closed. Silence returned to the house. I didn't move until the sun came up. I couldn't. I lay there in a puddle of cold sweat. My muscles locked up so tight they ached. When the room was full of morning light, I finally forced myself to sit up. The chair in the corner was empty. The bedroom door was wide open. I threw up on the floor right next to the bed. I called the police then. I was hysterical, babbling on the phone about a man in my room. They came quickly. 2 uniformed officers. They searched the house. They searched the yard. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry. The basement door was still bolted from the inside. The windows were all latched except the front door. It was unlocked. That I told them he must have had a key. I told them about the footprints on the deck the morning before. They looked, but the dew had dried off hours ago, and there was nothing in the dust. They took a report. They were polite, but I could see the look in their eyes. They thought I was crazy, a stressed-out single woman hearing things in the night. They suggested I get a security system. They said they'd have a patrol car drive by a few extra times that night. They left. And I was alone in the house again. I packed a bag in about 5 minutes. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, not caring what I grabbed. I couldn't stay there. Not another minute. Before I left, I went back up to the bedroom one last time to get my phone charger from the nightstand. I grabbed the charger and turned to leave. Then I stopped. I looked at the pillow next to mine, the empty side of the queen-sized bed. There was an indentation in the pillow, a smooth, round depression where a head had rested. And on the white pillowcase, right in the center of the dent, was a single, long black hair. Not mine. I'm blonde. I stared at it. My breath caught in my throat. He hadn't just been sitting in the chair. Before I woke up, before the sleeping pill wore off, he had been in the bed with me, lying right next to me, watching me sleep. I ran out of that house. I left the front door wide open, got in my car, and just drove. I drove to a motel 3 towns over. I've been staying here for 2 days. I don't know what to do. I can't go back there. But the police don't believe me. They think I'm imagining things, that I keep seeing that indentation in the pillow. I keep feeling that weight next to me that I didn't know was there. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake here in this brightly lit motel room with the chair jammed under the doorknob, is that I still don't know how he got in. And I don't know where he is now. He's out there somewhere. And he knows where I live. And he knows what I look like when I sleep.